In this session, we plan to cover the global issues on indirect taxes. We have two speakers who are actually running large functions in large corporates, and they will talk about how they deal with changes that take place around the world on indirect taxes. It's a major cost of doing business, and we will have our Swedish partner talk about hot topics in the European scenario. Welcome to the last session, and which I believe is the most important session of the day, to do with indirect taxes. As all of you would have experienced, that it is a major cost of doing business, whether it's an in-country business or global trade, and therefore it's a constantly evolving, constantly changing, not just in terms of laws, but in terms of aggression of the authorities.
The first thing that you may be doing when you get on a ship is to ask for a drink. And so this could look like an easy task, but for us who are tax specialists in indirect taxes, this is not an easy task. Because we need to understand whether it is a provision of tangible goods or a provision of services. So we feel that we may have an help from EU. We are in Europe. We know that VAT is ruled by a directive that is supposed to be the same in all countries, which is not the case. So this is the definition. I won't be reading it. Even when I'm serving dinner, not myself, I work shoreside, on the vessel, then I may have another big problem, which is to understand where is the place of supply. And don't think I'm crazy. This is, again, a EU regulation. This is a 3, 6, 9, 10 lines to decide where your dinner is served. This is the simplification. They allow us not to split the bill. Oh, thank you so much. They appreciate that the vessel is moving so that when you start having dinner, you are not in the same country as when you finish. How can we manage the complexity of indirect taxes? It's not easy. We may have some strategies, some things that can be, for sure, one rule or one strategy is to rely on your advisors. Not only because nowadays companies tend to have internal tax structures which are very small.
Rajiv, I wanted to say to everybody, we really appreciate the support that we have received in India. It's a plant that we built about 5 years ago. Rajiv and the team from Taxand have been tremendous support to us, and it was my pleasure to accept your invitation to speak here today.
Thank you, David.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about Renault and Nissan and what we do for customs and trade. Nissan and Renault came together several years, about 10 years ago, quite different fundamental starting point. Nissan in those days was basically a Japanese manufacturer, and they exported from Japan. And therefore, we had local entities all creating their own individual solution. That was the Nissan world. They were centralized, but then they had the independent around the world, you're on your own. Renault, on the other hand, was very centralized. They tried to control it all, and unfortunately, the people in Paris don't necessarily know the local rule in Chennai, India, or wherever else, and so that created problems. So about 2009, when the economic crisis hit, the decision was made to try to, across the company, to look for ways that we could combine activities and find some synergies. And customs was identified as one of those areas.
Holding companies. The traditional way to look at holding companies has been that you divide it into active or passive holding companies. And the difference between the two is completely different VAT treatment. What we see from, I would say, not only one or two, but a number of jurisdictions within the European Union is that the tax agency, the tax authorities, are getting more and more to look into the fact that the active holding company is being in a VAT position where they are getting input VAT recovery all the time. To reduce these costs, what we also see is they are trying to centralize the compliance functions, especially in VAT. What we would like to bring to the attention in this case is that although we have a European Union, we know that there are 27 members of that European Union, and there are also 27 different interpretations of the directive.